In the UK, according to the latest data from the Office of National Statistics, there are almost 30 million people right now on UK payroll. That's the highest number it's ever been since they started collecting their records since about 2013, so around about 10 years. Now, this data from the report shows your earnings by age, your location, and industry. The data also tells us how much you need to earn to be in the top 50%, the top 10%, and the top 1% of earners. So how much do you think that you need to earn in the UK to be in the top 10% of earners? Would this number be £80,000 or even £100,000? And what sort of careers and jobs would you need to earn that kind of money? And regardless of what those numbers are, ask yourself, how much do you think you need to earn to feel rich? Now, some of the information I share in this video may or may not surprise you. So if you want to be in the top 50% of earners here in the UK, you'll need to be earning £26,340. And as a monthly figure, that's £2,195 a month. That would put you in the middle of earners in the UK. For the top 25%, that comes out to £40,920, which comes out to £3,410 each month. Now, that kind of money can be found in jobs like being a lawyer, a finance manager, and a variety of other public sector roles. To reach the next bracket of being in the top 10% of earners in the UK, the salary you need is £62,160, or the equivalent take-home pay of £5,190 a month. To reach the top 5% of earners, you're looking at £84,600 a year, or a monthly take-home of £7,050. And now, to be a part of the 1% bracket in the UK, you need to be earning £475,000, and that's about £14,000 a month. Now, that's a significant sum of money, and with that being the 1%, that accounts for approximately 300,000 people here in the UK. So what kind of industries do you need to be in to earn this sort of money? Now, firstly, we can take a look through the rest of the data to see the kinds of sectors and industries you need to be looking at, depending on how much you want to earn or the financial position that you want to be in. And secondly, I want to talk a bit about what it means to be rich, and how this earned money is only just a small part of what we actually need to try to build our own wealth, rather than just purely breaking this down by industry. The highest paying sector on average is finance and insurance, and that may not come as much of a surprise. For the finance sector, we're looking at over £91,000. This leads the way by quite a big margin. Second place is mining and quarrying, and next on the list for 3, 4 and 5 is information and communication, energy production and supply, and then professional, scientific and technical roles. Now, on the low end, here are the sectors that apparently pay the least. And so this is agriculture, accommodation and food services. And the average salary for this is just £17,700. Also worth mentioning that location can play a big factor in where you can have a higher earning potential. So I came across an article in The Independent which read that more than half of Britons on £80,000 per year think they earn about the average salary. And that refers to a study conducted where they also found that even those who aren't around 40k per year consider themselves normal rather than fortunate. And then following on from this, one thing I think that really stands out is that it goes on to say that people are likely to underestimate their salary against an average in the country. 43% of those with incomes between £100,000 and £120,000 per year thought that their social circles were better off than they were. So when I look back over the years, you always think that people are doing better than you or doing better off than you, and there's this constant battle to compare and have the same things which other people have, which ends up just being a waste of time and a waste of money. And these can lead to things like lifestyle inflation. Now, these amounts of money sound like small fortunes, but if you consider how much you get after tax, you can easily spend large sums of money, especially in some parts of the country. What might seem like a large salary won't go anywhere near as far as a cheaper part of the country with a lower salary. So perspective and many other factors have to come into play to really make someone feel rich. It's not always the case that having a high income will make you feel rich or wealthy. For example, a study by Sports Illustrated article showed that a large percentage of high earning athletes and sports stars end up being in serious financial hardships after their retirement. Now, this is a common story that we tend to hear, and this could be a result of numerous different reasons. It's an interesting topic because it leads us on to another thing talking about wealth and why actually having a high income won't necessarily make you feel rich. And really, it's about what you do with that income. And sometimes, as you'll see now, some of the wealthiest people in the UK aren't really focused on building up their earned income. For them, it's all about building wealth. So let's go and see what that really means. For example, you can take a look at the Sunday Times Rich List. This just makes up a list of the wealthiest people in the UK based on adding up all of their assets. And there are similar lists for the US and the rest of the world as well if you want to look at those. Now, if you look through this list, one thing you'll see in common for a lot of these names is that their wealth is often tied to some kind of big business. And it's really once you add up all of those shares in those businesses that you really start to see where their real wealth is made. Just as an example here, position 5 is James Dyson, who founded the Dyson Company. And another one on the list is Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's accumulated his wealth as CEO of a chemicals group. Group. Now, what's interesting is that if you research the company's latest annual report, you'll be able to see the pay packages, and you'll notice their salary or pay is only just a small portion of their overall salary package. After looking through these reports, you'll see a lot of long-term and short-term share incentives. So as long as a company does well and meets certain targets, you'll make another 4 times as much on top through those shares. Those shares can also end up growing in value too. And this model isn't unique to any particular company, and you'll see this all over the business world, as earned income is typically taxed a lot higher than assets. Assets are usually left untouched until you have to sell them or get dividends. The well-off people with real wealth on this list could potentially just live off their assets and not earn anything more and pay no income tax. They could even take bank loans against their assets and use those to pay for their living expenses. There's probably a whole host of other ways people can do this, but still is quite interesting to think about. Now, this raises a question of how wealth is distributed across the UK as a whole. Another study, which I'll link below, investigated what levels of wealth that you need to be in the top percentage of households. The report also showed what assets make up that source of wealth. The report illustrates how wealth is heavily focused in the top 10% of households, and it showed that having assets were a major contributor towards a person's wealth. This is quite interesting because when you compare that to the earnings we covered at the start of the video, earning a top 10% income is not going to get you in the top 10% of household wealth, unless you're very careful and invest your money, which people in the top 10% do. And a question you may be asking is what makes up that millions of pounds worth of wealth? And the biggest difference really is 2 kinds of assets: pensions and properties. Pensions make up between 40 and 50% of all wealth in the wealthier households, and the property shows a similar trend, making up between 30% and almost 50% in groups above the average. One of the biggest takeaways from this is that owning assets that have historically done very well and tend to increase in value above the rate of inflation. That really improves the wealth of those people, but the problem is that if only one part of society keeps buying those assets and has the means to own them, then the gap between the richest and the poorest just keeps getting bigger and bigger. As if you never have the means to buy the assets, then you end up in a difficult situation, which millions of people in the UK find themselves in every single day. So now you've seen the data, and we've seen what it means to be rich in the UK and what the top few percent earn, and this can help make you reflect on how much you need for yourself in order to feel rich. It may not be tied to a number, and it could be something like you'll feel rich once you've paid off your mortgage, for example, or once you're no longer in debt. For some, it may mean being able to live a life on your own terms and to do whatever you want each day, knowing all your bills and costs of living are covered. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, you may like to check out my other video over here.